All right. You might hear my guinea hens a little bit here at the door here. They want to get in here so they can hang out with me, but if I let them in, they'd poop on the floor, and then where would we be? No way. In this lesson, what I want to communicate to you is that there's a very different way of thinking about rhetoric than the way we've discussed it so far. We've been talking an awful lot about the Greeks, and for the Greeks, rhetoric was really about winning. It was almost about psychological oppression. You're the speaker or the writer, you've got people listening to you or reading you, and you want to win, right? You want to conciliate them to think the way you do, to get, as I've said so many times, their beliefs and their values to tally with yours. But there's a wonderful and much more modern way of thinking about rhetoric that I want you to understand, and I'm going to cite the source again. His name is Kenneth Burke. He's one of the intellectual giants of the 20th century. And I've actually gotten a few people in my face-to-face classes, especially Jason in my 8 o'clock class, interested in him and in his thinking. So what Burke does is something very different. He comes along and he says, you know, it can be about winning. It can be about that. But his argument is different. What Burke does in the late 30s and early 40s is write a series of books, and among the things that he talks about is the idea that when you meet someone that you've never met before, could be a social gathering, could be, you sit down in a class and there's someone next to you, could be a work situation. In terms of real life stuff, this I think you're going to find this holds water. And when you meet them, if they're total strangers to you, one of the first things that you've got to do is figure out, common sense wise, whether or not you have anything in common with them. Now, Burke says that this is really the essence of rhetoric. When two people meet, according to him, what they're looking for are points of identification. They're looking for substance. They're looking for things that can bind them together. And I know it's going to get kind of fancy. This is kind of a big word, but Burke says when two people meet, if they find an awful lot of things in common with one another, there's no persuasion necessary at all. They're going to get along. They're going to become friends. To use his fancy word, they're going to be consubstantial, so to speak. And I've got some examples to try to make this very abstract idea come home to roost. And let's start with example 1.
Hey, are you a superhero? Yeah, I'm a superhero. I'm Spider-Man. Look at my costume. How about you? Are you a superhero? Well, I'm kind of a superhero. I'm mainly a millionaire that can afford lots of gadgets. Well, you got a costume. You look like a superhero to me. Let's go on down to Starbucks, grab a latte, and we'll try to find some criminals to fight. We can be friends.
All right. Those examples are completely ridiculous and pretty stupid. We probably better come up with some better ones. It's just a piteous attempt at me representing me wanting to be popular on the internet. It's not going to work. Past the silliness of it, the ridiculousness of it, is my depiction of the idea of people getting along or not getting along. Burke says if you meet someone with whom you have a lot of substance, a lot of points of identification, you've probably got a friend. If there's many, you might have a lover. If you can't find any, you might have someone rhetorically that you're simply not going to be able to get along with, or you might have an enemy. You might have what he calls a counter agent. And I know most of you, especially some of you older students in this course, you know that this is real rhetoric. This is what living in the world is all about. To give you examples that are probably a little bit more reasonable and less ridiculous, I'm thinking of me recently, some experiences that I've had. You know, a year and a half ago, when I started out teaching at Central Lakes College, a school that I intend to stay at as long as I can. I'd like to put in another 15, 20 years up there if I could. I love Central Lakes College. But I remember when I came last August, a year ago August, I walked into C223 and there's some students in there. And, I knew that I was a commuting teacher. I drive an hour to get to Central Lakes College. And it's not like I walked in and said, you know what I'm going to do now is create points of rhetorical identification between me and the students. That wasn't consciously what was on my mind, but I do remember clearly walking into the room and saying things like, you know what, I'm not a stranger to Crow Wing County. I told them the truth, that I've been hanging out in Crow Wing County since 1967. My parents to this minute own a lake home down on 18 over near Garrison. I spent summers and weekends up there from about the age of 6 or 7 on. I wanted them to know that I'm not some stranger just blasting in and leaving. I'm part of Crow Wing County. Crow Wing County is in my blood. I joked, but the fact of it is there. I've been sticking my head in that Lion drinking fountain in downtown Brainerd over by the water tower since 1967. So I wanted them to know that I'm of the place. And I think it worked. They could look at me and say, well, you know what, he does understand us maybe. Maybe he is of this place. I'm thinking of an example of rhetorical identification that I offered your face-to-face students years ago. And I'm reminded of this because I just saw the young man that's in this whole story. Because I just saw him in a restaurant. He's all grown up, getting ready to graduate from college. Joe Mugley, this one's for you. Joe Mugley was a student of mine. And I remember when he came into my old classroom at the age of 15, he slouched down in his chair so profoundly that he was almost slid away. Another 8 o'clock class, I walk in the morning, here's a teenager pretty much going horizontal. He looked pretty sleepy. And he was wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt. I said the obvious. You're wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt. And he was kind of half sitting, half laying there, and he nodded and he said, yeah. You a Led Zeppelin fan, Mr. Johnson? I said, kid, I saw Led Zeppelin. March 1977, 2 nights in a row. And he completely woke up, jumped out of his chair, ran to the center of the room where I was standing, and he said, I love you. And he threw his arms around me and hugged me. And I hugged him right back. 2 Led Zeppelin fans. Now, if someone had been walking by that door and looked through the glass, maybe like my old principal, the principal would have looked in there and maybe wondered, why is there a middle-aged man hugging a 15-year-old boy? She could have thrown open the door and asked me that question. Why are you hugging a 15-year-old boy? I said, well, excuse me, this is a moment of rhetorical identification. I'm an older guy and he was just a kid, but we both loved Led Zeppelin. And that was all we needed to begin our friendship. And we spent the rest of the day arguing about which was the greatest Led Zeppelin album of all. It's obviously number 4. Wait a minute, Houses of the Holy is up there too. Anyway, I think you're getting the idea. A more important example, and to give you a little bit of history here, is the idea that we have identification, rhetorical identification with people that are like us. And I've already told you before that I feel a very serious kinship with all of the people who have ever taught rhetoric, composition, or English. It doesn't matter what era they're in. I feel a relationship with them. I feel this identification, this substance that I'm trying to talk to you about. And I'd like to end this little video by talking to you about 2 very important people in the history of Central Lakes College. And I don't think we're wandering away from rhetoric and composition here. I want you to understand a little bit more of the tradition of our school, because I know I'm sure trying to learn more about it. I want to go back to that moment the other day when I was in my 8:30 class, and I said, how many of you know who John Hassler is? And not a hand went up in the air. You know what? Same thing happened to me last year too. I want those students to know, and I'm going to be talking with them about this tomorrow, 8 o'clock and 9:30, and to you here. I want them to know that John Hassler was a man who taught at Brainerd Community College and as it became Central Lakes Community College for many, many years. John Hassler, and you can check out his picture here in this video, was not only an English teacher, teaching the courses I'm teaching right now, Comp 1, Comp 2, Classical Mythology, etc. He also is a Minnesota writer. I knew John Hassler when he left Central Lakes College and came down to St. John's. I got to have lunch with him a few times, and I remember being very excited to meet him and to get to know him a little bit. John Hassler, just to fill you in, got started as a writer at Central Lakes College. He sent in short stories 150 times in a row and was rejected 150 times in a row before he finally punched one of those stories through. That began his career as a writer, and he wrote 9 fairly wonderful novels, most of them set here in central Minnesota. And if you pick up those novels, if you pick up, for instance, Staggerford, you're going to see little bits and pieces of Brainerd and Crow Wing County and people that are at Central Lakes College to this minute. he is an important person to know about, and I just want you to know his story. John Hassler became ill, and he went the way of all American writers not too many years ago. But before that happened, another legend on Central Lakes College history sort of stepped up and made sure that we wouldn't forget who he is. And I'll give you a picture of him here. And that is the famous Joseph Plut. Joseph Plut can be seen here in this photograph that I'm adding into this video. But if you ever do go to the John Hassler Library, you're going to see that Joe Plut was the kind of English teacher, the kind of great-hearted civil servant, that's not the right word, humanitarian man, that we make great big giant paintings of. And there's a really large, pretty stately looking painting of Joe Plut. Joe Plut was a friend of John Hassler. They stood shoulder to shoulder and taught side by side for years at Central Lakes College. Plut put in 36 years, if I have it right, as an English teacher, teaching film studies, which I'm teaching right now, teaching Comp 1, Comp 2, Mythology, American Lit. And I want you to know this, and I hope you get curious enough about this to go chase these books down. Not only should you read the novels of John Hassler, try out one, try Staggerford, but I think you owe it to yourself to at least take a shot at picking up a very new book that Joe Plut, it feels like an advertisement right now, maybe that's what it is. Joe Plut wrote a book called Conversations with John Hassler. 9 interviews about the 9 novels that John Hassler wrote for us. A shelf full of books. And there are 9 interviews, and each one of them covers a novel. And I just wanted you to know who these guys are. John Hassler's dead, he's gone, and I can't talk to him anymore. I can't talk to him about the idea that the great material for our writing comes from our dreams. I can't talk with him about the idea that writers just can't quit. You got to go down swinging. If you get rejected by a teacher or by a magazine or a book publishing house, you've got to keep going. You've got to try to keep bashing. I'm very excited to tell you that Joseph Plut and I have been corresponding lately via email. Joe Plut and I are going to be having lunch in January of this year. I just got an email from him yesterday, and that's because even though we've never met, even though he's got 25 years on me, he's in his 70s, I'm 52, we are sort of comrades in English. And I just wanted to communicate this to you for several reasons. I want you to know that there's some great people at Central Lakes College. There's a serious tradition there. I also want you to know that in Crow Wing County, there are writers among us. You walk down the street or go to the mall or go over to the Cub Foods to buy some groceries there in Baxter. You have no idea that the person next to you may be grabbing an apple or an avocado might be an American writer. There are writers everywhere of note. And thanks for listening to me talk about this. And it is not impossible that one of the next writers that's going to be known in Crow Wing County is someone you know. Or maybe it's you.